today's video, I'm going to go over 7 EDC lessons you can learn if you are serious about concealed carry and carrying every day. Now, I did write an article on my blog. I will link that down below, but I go into a little bit more detail. I'm going to kind of glaze over it, but I do kind of have to answer some things before the window lickers really go crazy on me because of some of the stuff I'm going to say. So I'm going to kind of answer that before they go crazy, but watch this video in its entirety because it's going to be interesting. So, number one, most important thing that I've found is training. You need training. And on top of training, you need to be diverse and you need to practice your training and constantly study afterwards. Turn this into a hobby. Isn't it cool? Yeah, it is, isn't it? So get books, constantly go to training courses. There's online training courses. There's, all these sets of information that you can draw from and learn from. So anyways, not everything's useful for your application, but you can kind of get indirect lessons from it as well. So for instance, medical training. So if you're thinking you're going to get in a gunfight, you might end up taking some. Or you might, more likely than not, you're probably going to be somebody who would have to kind of act as a first medical responder to give first aid or trauma treatment, first trauma treatment to somebody who is waiting on an ambulance. And that could save a life and make the ambulance's job a little bit easier maybe. So just make yourself an asset. Get a lot of diverse training. Even something like infantry training. That can teach you things like planning, understanding how to work as a team, being a leader, responsibilities and stuff like that. Take only what you need kind of thing. And how, comfort is key to a lot of your EDC. If you're going to carry every day, the E in EDC, then it needs to be comfortable. If not, you're going to do MDC. Most day carry. Yeah. So anyways, with that said, let's go ahead and move on. So, second one is brainstorm your gear based off your training. Too many times have I heard people say, what kind of medical gear should I get in my EDC? And they're not necessarily asking me yet, but they'll ask someone that. And the first thing that pops into my head is, if you've had medical training, then you understand what kind of gear that you need. Now it's just based off of research, and you could ask an opinion. I could understand somebody who's had medical training asking an opinion of somebody who may have used something in training or actually used it, but asking what kind of stuff to get, like they don't even know to carry a tourniquet, or even, they're not asking what kind of tourniquet, they're just asking what kind of medical stuff. Very broad. That means that they've had no training whatsoever, in my opinion. Or they don't even know what scenario they're supposed to be, sweating balls over the night before they put on their EDC kit. So, they have no training. If you have training, you know what kind of gear you're going to need to have based on, the stuff that you're trying to prepare for. So, it's up to you how much or how little you carry, but the other thing that training can give you, if you are actually paying attention and you actually have some kind of mechanical understanding and you do more than fog up a mirror, is you'll actually understand improvisation. So you'll be able to brainstorm your gear and see if you have multiple purposes to gear or if you can improvise gear. Again, we're going back to comfort in order to follow this acronym right here, or not acronym, but this EDC, this abbreviated, whatever. So anyways, with that said, we'll go ahead and move on to the third one. So, I would recommend that people be very picky with the EDC clothing that they have, and yes, that means every day. You need to basically look at the clothing that you have that you dedicate to basically carrying outside the home. And you need to make sure that that clothing allows you to not only carry your system, but to efficiently carry your system. That means that if you're going to have something like a hoodie or whatever, make sure you take off those. Make sure you take off the little strings, the adjustment strings. Having to draw with those things, I've had one whack me in the eye. It sucks. Doing draw training or whatever, dry of course. Also, make sure that hoodie isn't going to snag on your holster or whatever. Just work with your gear, work with your clothing and stuff like that. Have you ever had a pair of pants that basically have a belt loop? Like I carry at the 3 o'clock. I've had belt loops that don't quite interconnect properly, like with the 2 loops on my holsters. So, or maybe I have one that has a single clip for like really small pistols. I've had those issues because, you know, I wasn't really picking the right clothing in the past. So, you know, now there's so many different considerations. Be picky about the type of clothing that you're choosing to wear outside the home. Even the nice clothing that you're wearing. I have a whole wardrobe and there's only a few sets of things, if I'm going to be carrying a firearm, that I will actually wear, no matter how big or small the pistol is, because I basically have to still be able to functionally get to that pistol because it's a life-saving tool. Time is life. And the more time you're taking, the less likely you're going to get out alive or in happy unhurt condition or less hurt. Whatever. So anyways, that's just my little piece of advice. Don't get jackets with drawstrings on them, or if you do, cut them off or whatever. And make sure your clothing, you can actually get to a pistol and you can actually lift it up above the bottom of your rib cage at least without snagging on your ass. So anyways, that's that. Number 4 kind of goes into that, but it's not necessarily on clothing. Kind of is. Number 4 is respect your gun hand and your work hand. So what that means is I carry a gun with this hand and I shoot with this hand. This is my support hand. And so this one is the most important one right here. You should always have this free as much as you can. There are times you can't, like maybe you're driving, maybe you have a stick shift or whatever. I'm not saying to treat this like it's paralyzed and it's useless, but things like do not hold your girlfriend or wife's hand or child's hand with this hand. This is not a baggage handling hand. Basically, this whole side of me is not to be occupied. The girlfriend's not to hold on to the arm. You know, she's not even supposed to stand on this side. She can stand on the work hand side. You know, the one that can be occupied, the one that grabs groceries off the shelf when I'm shopping with her, or maybe I'm just pulling things out of my pocket. And also, to go further into that, I would recommend setting up your system to where the only thing that this hand is going to have access to on this side of the body is going to be defensive type implements. Things such as car keys can be used as defensive implements or weapons or whatever. Maybe your folding knife or utility knife. I don't recommend using a folding knife as a defensive, you know, tool, because when you get down to needing a knife when you have a firearm, probably not really going to want to have to fiddle with flipping things open. Just my experience. But anyways, and then of course you have your gun. So those are the only 3 things that I would have on this side, unless it's something that I reach over, like I have chest pockets on some of my jackets or whatever. That's the only exception, but that's because it's a cross draw, so to speak. And the rest of it's going to be like my cell phone or whatever. I get used to working with my cell phone with one hand. So yeah, that's my recommendation on number 4. So number 5. Number 5 is going to be a little bit interesting. So we are going. Yes, I'm looking at my notes. I have to have notes because I'm a scatterbrain. So anyways, number 5 is I recommend that you actually have multiple pistols. So here's where people are going to crap on me, because they're going to be like, well, I need an everyday carry system. You need an everyday carry in the form of categorical items, not specific items. You can't say, I want to carry my SIG P365 every day of the year, and I can't move from that because that's my everyday carry system. You're carrying a pistol. You're carrying medical gear for these types of scenarios. You may say, I need it for hemorrhaging control, I need something that can act as a tourniquet. Okay, I'll improvise. If you have medical training, you know you can improvise. It may not be the best, but you can improvise. Comfort, key. Okay, so you have a belt, you'll improvise, but you will carry a thing of C-locks or something like that, or you know, some hemostatic gauze, like maybe the quick combat gauze, you know, or whatever. So yeah. So just as an example, you're categorically staying consistent with your desired EDC system. Like for a knife, you could have what we call the little peckers, the little tiny things, or maybe you have a Swiss Army knife or whatever. Your EDC system still incorporates a knife in a utilitarian sense, but it can be defensive if you need it to. So you don't have to stay rigid all the time. So now let's go ahead and get back to it. I would recommend one small gun, kind of like the size of the M&P shield, so it's small enough to conceal pretty effectively, and you use the flush-fitting magazine. The point of having a small pistol is to conceal it better. Okay, great. So, you have one small gun that you can conceal really well, so like if you're going out on a date night, you're probably going to want to wear fancy clothes. You're not going to be able to wear that 511 jacket and all that other crap unless that's just the way you are and your girl's fine with it for now. In 2 years it's probably going to change. But anyways, with all that said, then, maybe you have this small pistol around. The concept that I've thought of is having a small pistol that's light and, doesn't really take up much room and it's almost unnoticeable is very easy to put on every day and carry around every day. If it's a big pistol, you're constantly having to readjust. You're restricted on the type of clothing you can wear because it has to be baggy, it has to fit this profile, it has to do this, has to do that. It can be a pain. And realistically, a lot of people that say they EDC, like a Glock 17 or a Glock 19, they MDC. Most days they carry it. But anyways, it's a most day carry gun. Sometimes they just go without a gun. I mean, if you really want to carry every day, that's on you. I don't necessarily go with the whole EDC profile all the time because realistically I can't. Like when I'm going on base to shop, I can't. So until the stuff actually changes to where, I can be, free, on base, then things really can't change for me. So anyways, have one that's, maybe your Glock 23 or Glock 19 size, and then one that's smaller, something small enough to conceal, big enough to fight with, as James Jaeger said. That's actually a pretty good saying. I think I agree with that. But anyways, something that's too small, it lacks controllability and stuff like that, your ability to perform efficiently with it, I would stick outside of that range. But you have something that you actually can carry every day, even though it's not the best thing ever and it's not going to prepare you for the zombie apocalypse and to take on everybody in your town all at the same time and Mogadishu yourself. You got to have something, right? So anyways, now let's go into number 6. Okay, so this one is going to be a little bit of a controversy for a lot of people because I already mentioned it. Utility folders are not good for fighting. And I would recommend that you actually get some night defense or actual combatives experience or something like that, grappling or wrestling or something. Because typically you want to stay on your feet as best you can. Not exactly the easiest thing to do, especially if somebody's bigger than you. And if you're actually feeling threatened, that's typically when you're pulling out a knife, because probably, number one, you probably can't get to your gun at that point, and you're obviously not able to solve your issues, So you're basically on your back, probably. You can't get to your gun, so you're going for another deadly weapon to apply deadly force, because that's how it'll be classified, as deadly force in most states. Pulling out a knife is deadly force, because you're using it as a defensive implement. So, with that said, why don't you just get something small like a punch knife or a little dagger, a straight edge, or not a straight edge, but a fixed blade, and even something that's like 2 inches, has a blade of 2 inches or something like that, really sharp. You could pull that out, and you can do a lot of damage for somebody that's in your quick space. You can cut tendons, you can actually cut jugulars and stuff like that, cut open the airway and stuff like that, blind them and stuff. It can get pretty ugly in that kind of close confined space, so it's really not that much to add that if you're really thinking that you're going to need it. So if that's something that is big in your area, is people actually wanting to manhandle you and go hands-on with you, then that might be realistic. So prepare accordingly, but I would recommend getting training or getting experience having to deal with those close quarter situations before you just choose whatever somebody else says. Because as I said before, if you're asking what type of knife to carry, you probably have no training on knives. Just saying, because typically if you have training and you have an idea of what you need to defend yourself against, then you will ask, hey, what do you think of this knife, or whatever? Do you think that this one will work for this, or you think something's comparable or better. You know, asking what kind of knives in this category are better, because you're probably already in the fixed blade, you know, category or something like that. So yeah, not just asking, hey, what kind of knife should I carry? That's kind of broad. But anyways, now let's go on to number 7 and the final one. This is going to piss off a lot of people, but whatever. So a handheld light is pretty much all you need. If you've ever had any low light training, and I'm pretty sure you've probably been told to practice going from a handheld light to a weapon mounted light. You should have a weapon mounted light, but you should also have a handheld light. You're going to spend more time pulling out a handheld light than anything. And here's the thing, if you have a handheld light up and you positively identified something, and then you go to a pistol to pull out a pistol, are you really going to waste those seconds? We already talked about time is life. So are you going to waste those seconds being like, hold on, switch on the weapon light now? What about after you use your pistol? Checking things. Oh yeah, I'm just going to flag everybody and point it around. Like, you're probably dropping the flashlight and stuff like that. No, I don't. No. I mean, your light's already out. You're already on them. Just get to work. How about that? It's a little bit more effective. Now, for home defense, who cares? Whatever. You're responding, and use your interior light. Use common sense. Kind of going outside the category of this video. So, anyways, this is mostly outside the house stuff. So, right now, it's 24 hours of daylight. Would you believe it's midnight right now? It's not midnight right now. But anyways, with that said, those are my 7 EDC lessons, and I promise you I have not had coffee. This is just the way I am about this kind of stuff. So anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. I know this is probably a little bit different than most people, but this is based off of, as Paul Harrell says, my experience, my training, you know, blah, 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 blah. He said it best, though. Whatever. And he did a pretty good job. But this isn't recommendations other than the first part. Get training. You'll look like an idiot. I'm serious. If you don't have any training and you're trying to basically just form this gear to fit into the gun community or whatever, and you think you're prepared by having items, you are the scariest part of our community, and you are the reason why the statistics for bad gun ownership are going through the roof. So anyways, don't be that guy or gal. If you're a gal, get training. They want to see you at the classes, and yes, you're capable of keeping up with the dudes. So you just got to put a little bit of effort into it, basically. So anyways, with that said, I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and you guys have a good one.